Stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, an elegant guide to the craft of storytelling by Lani Diane Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lani Diane Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm film scholar and tiny snapdragon, Noelle LaCroix.
And I'm story expert and minion sent to do God's work, Lani Diane Rich. And we are here today to talk about Blood Ties, the 13th episode of Season 5.
Blood Ties aired on February 6th, 2001, and was written by Stephen S. DeKnight and directed by Michael Gershman.
As you all know, this is a fully spoiled Buffy podcast, and we might talk about anything in Buffy at any time for any reason, so you have been warned. Sometimes we like to pretend stuff, like say there's a fireman or a shepherd. You know what? Let's just go on patrol. In Blood Ties, Buffy and the gang hang in the magic box and try to figure out what to do about Glory. When the Scoobies ask about the key, Buffy and Giles decide to tell them that Dawn is the key. Meanwhile, back at the Knights of the Round Table Ranch, Jinx, Dreg, and an unnamed minion taunt the Knights and get their collective asses kicked. Then Glory steps in and beats the hell out of the Knights.
Hey, nice sword, but it hurts.
Willow and Tara set up magical alarms around the magic box and the Summers house to notify them if Glory gets near. At Buffy's house, everyone gathers for Buffy's birthday, and Dawn senses everyone's weirdness and gets upset. Later, she crawls out of her window and bumps into Night Stalker Spike, who goes with her to the magic box to find Giles' journal and figure out what the hell is going on. Spike reads the journal entry and... oops.
So they sent the key to her in human form. In the form of a sister. Huh. I guess that's you, Nibbler.
Dawn returns home and cuts herself in shock, wondering if it's blood, if she's real. Buffy sends everyone home from the party and talks to Dawn. She and Joyce try to console Dawn, but Dawn shouts at them to get out of her room. At the magic box the next day, Buffy wants to find out everything she can about the key. Not to fight Glory, but to help Dawn understand. They discover that Spike helped Dawn break into the magic box, and Buffy goes to his crypt to beat the hell out of him.
Maybe if you had been more honest with her in the first place, you wouldn't be trying to make yourself feel better with a round of kick to Spike.
The next night, Dawn lights her diaries on fire and crawls out the window. Buffy gathers the Scoobies plus Spike to go look for Dawn. Dawn goes to the hospital, where she goes into the room filled with Glory's victims. They all react to her presence with fear, except one, a brain-sucked Knight of Byzantium.
You know what the key is? Where did I come from? Who made me? What am I? Please.
Destroy her. Cracked her in the bones. The sun bleeding into the sky.
Dawn goes to the hospital break room and meets Ben there. They talk, and Dawn tells him that she's a key and someone named Glory is after her. Ben freaks out and tells her to run, and then he turns into Glory.
Oh no, she's here! She's here!
Hey, don't I know you?
Glory doesn't know what Ben just heard, but she knows Dawn is the Slayer's little sister, so she interrogates her. Dawn tries to use this as an opportunity to find out what the key is. Glory gets frustrated and is about to brain-suck Dawn when everyone shows up. Buffy and Spike fight Glory, and Glory manages to spear Buffy in the shoulder with a crowbar before Willow and Tara do a teleportation spell and clap Glory into the sky, where she then falls to the ground.
Oh, shh.
Buffy tells Dawn that she's her sister and she loves her. She touches the blood from her shoulder and presses it against Dawn's injury and says they share that same blood and this is both touching and yet gross and I think unhygienic, but we get it. It's sweet. Then Dawn kind of remembers something.
I think he might have left before Glory came. I can't remember.
All right, Noelle, so here we are at Blood Ties. This, of course, is the moment from which we will never be without somebody on Twitter saying, hey, did you guys know that Ben is Glory? So we're going to have that experience for a while. Just want to welcome you to that. All right, so one thing before we get started here today, we've talked at length before about ableism in Buffy, especially with regard to people with mental illness. We will have that discussion again as it is warranted, but as we're repeating offenses that we've discussed at length before here, I refer you all to episode 110, No Place Like Home, for the full call-in. All right, Noelle, what did you think about Blood Ties?
Finally!
Right?
Everyone finds out Dawn's the key. Dawn finds out Dawn's the key. And holy shit, Ben is Glory! I mean, suddenly we've got a lot of story to work with, and I think this episode is really tight in that regard, but also like, it's good. It's good. This is a good episode of TV.
It is a good episode. It's kind of a turning point. Like, this is the midpoint of the season, episode 13. This is when we start to ramp things up because we only have 9 episodes left in the season, so we can start to get serious. I love that this is the moment where Dawn finds out everything, because I get really sick of secrets. This episode, though, when I think about it, the one that I remember, the moment that I remember is that moment where Buffy touches her blood and then touches it to Dawn's blood, which feels really gross to me. But at the same time, like, I get it. I get it. And blood is hugely significant. I mean, Spike talks about it all the time, like how significant and meaningful blood is. It's always about blood,
Mm-hmm.
So when they do that, like, I get it. It just always feels a little like, could we just maybe talk about it instead of smearing your blood together? Because that feels like wrong, but whatever.
Yeah. Except that, like, big metaphor.
Yes.
Like, we have to do, because this is the world that we're in. Like, we're in the world of the big metaphor because we are in a fantasy genre television series. But it raises the question for me of, vis-a-vis this episode and Dawn's whole trajectory, really, what is the metaphor?
Well, I mean,
it's a little muddled, right? Or is it just to me? I don't know. I felt like
I'm not sure, because we've had that discussion. Like, Spike talks a lot about it's always blood, right? It's always blood. It always comes down to blood. Blood is life, and blood, I mean, is life, right? That's what the vampires are stealing from humans, is their blood, is their life force. And so I think having that connection through their blood, that Dawn was created and given form, but she was given form using, Buffy's blood, I guess, her genetics, her whatever.
I guess.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, and that's kind of my central question about this metaphor that they're doing with Dawn and Buffy and being family.
Yeah.
Because Dawn finds out she's the key and not real ?
Right, but define real. I mean, that's a whole thing, right? Mm-hmm.
And at least, I mean, and that's how she interprets it.
Yes.
Dawn takes this news to mean that she's possibly not real.
Right.
And that is, earth-shattering for
her.
Yeah. Of course, because of course it would be. Mm-hmm. I mean, I like, in terms of Dawn and like what she is and whether or not she's real, I really like Willow's assessment.
Yeah.
She's real. She's just kind of new.
I know.
Which is very sweet.
It is.
But we've played this mystical is the metaphorical game the whole time on this show. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the metaphors are clearer than at other times, right? High School is Hell is kind of the most obvious of those.
Right.
I'm not totally clear on what the metaphor is here with Dawn and her family.
Right.
From the language that they're using, I get the feeling that this is supposed to be an adoption story. Mm-hmm. The idea of being blood family or not, but also the we were going to tell you when you were older.
Right.
This idea that there's like this secret about the origin of someone in your family.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, and maybe it's because of the mystical, metaphorical trappings of all this,
Right.
it feels a little bit like a fairy tale changeling type of story,
Mm-hmm.
or the baby, you get the baby, but it's not the baby that you thought
Yes.
was really the baby. Because Dawn, apparently, according to the mythology of the show, is both wholly human
Mm-hmm.
and wholly supernatural.
Yeah.
And I'm about to talk about self-harm here. So if that is a trigger for you, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I love you. When Dawn comes back into the party having cut herself,
Yeah.
and of course it's Tara. Of course it's Tara who notices her.
Yes.
Of course it's Tara who sees first. She's doing what my friends at Dances of Universal Peace call Mary arms.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen the Virgin Mary and
Yes.
Jesus doing this pose in art. It's like arms open with your elbows at your sides.
Mm-hmm.
There's a decidedly holy person, sort of Jesus-y vibe to the whole backstory of the key.
Yes.
And therefore to Dawn. She's a gazillion-year-old blob of potent energy
Mm-hmm.
and also 14 years old with all the hormonal fluctuation that implies.
Right.
And I appreciate, by the way, that it's Spike who
Yeah.
points that out,
Yeah.
that she's run away and he's having his moment with Buffy, which we'll talk about, his
Yeah.
relationship to calling Buffy on her bullshit in this
Right.
episode. But when he's like, you know what? She might have run away anyway because she's 14.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which I just love. I love that it's Spike who zooms in on the ultra humanity
Yeah.
of what's going on for Dawn.
Exactly.
Because of course he does.
Right.
Of course he does.
Of course he does.
But in terms of the metaphor,
Mm-hmm.
it feels to me a little bit like the writers wrote themselves into a metaphor corner. They wanted to give Buffy a sister. They wanted to do this mystical key subplot. But maybe they hadn't ironed out all the details before they pressed go on the storyline. I'm not totally clear.
Right.
And that is really, it's really my only kind of misgiving about this episode is that it's set up as an adoption metaphor with Dawn going off to find the truth about herself and where
Right.
she's really from and so on. But it falls flat for me at the end in that moment that you just talked about with Buffy and Dawn and bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
Because is their blood actually the same? Like, if you were to draw their blood
Mm-hmm.
and test it, would you be able, do they have DNA? And I don't know how genetics works in that way, but
Right.
would you be able to tell from a blood draw that these people were related?
I don't think we confirm that in this episode, but with the events of the gift, I think we confirm that it is the same blood that they took
Right.
Buffy's
Right.
blood or somehow made
However they
Dawn
did that.
from Buffy and Joyce, I guess, and maybe Hank Summers a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah. It's fascinating.
Mhm.
And kind of great, but also super not clear.
Yeah.
Except that Dawn herself comes down on the side of identifying with her humanness, which, of course, is the most important
Right.
thing here.
Mhm.
She's asking Buffy if she thinks Joyce will raise her allowance.
Right.
But, of course, most importantly on the, what is Dawn?
Mm-hmm.
Is that she doesn't remember seeing Ben transform into Glory right in front of her.
Right. And
Which
we're going to
suggests that she's
it's
definitely
she's
human because we know
superhuman
this.
because
Yeah.
Spike can see it. When Spike sees it, he's the one who constantly has to remind everybody because the humans can't, but he can because he's supernatural. Now, I don't recall if Buffy witnessed it and forgot or not, but yeah. So Dawn is super. When I say superhuman, I don't mean she's a superhuman. I mean that she is exactly human. She's
hyper real.
Yeah.
She's
and-
not just real. She's
Exactly.
extra real.
Right.
Um
And the thing is that if you think about it, the idea of everybody having a soul, right? And especially if you believe that soul continues on after you die. that Dawn is a weird blob of mystical energy seems to be true of all of us, right? It's just that Dawn got here a different way and has a history that was written, that was created. At the same time, the only connection that any of us has to our own history, our own past, is the memory of it. And so from this point forward, if the memories are there, then that experience is there, and that is as real as anything else that anybody remembers,
Yeah.
I mean, I still don't like the pregnancy with Joyce, that mystical pregnancy thing. I've never thought of it before, but ever since you and Dr. Kelly Jones, who had come in, who had talked to you about it and brought in that insight, ever since you guys brought that up, it has bothered me quite a bit as a mother to know that there was something done to me and in my experience and in my memory that I was not a part of, that I did not actually consent to, feels weird. At the same time, if you've got this kid that you love, I think you'd be like, I wouldn't, if I found out that my youngest daughter was not like that, somehow the memories of her, and I would be like, fine, I'll keep it, because I get her, because I get her with that. So I, from the mom perspective, I would choose to supplant whatever my actual experience was with this, kind of created universe,
And that's really powerful, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that it was either last week or the week before that I callously was like, well, Buffy could just kill Dawn and then, this would all be fine. Which I say, as a like Whedonverse kind of a reflection. Also, that story would just be rad. But what I love about what you just said is that, like, the only thing that really makes any of our experiences real, like as humans, is our memory of them.
Yeah.
Like, that's a little bit of a philosophical thread that I'm not sure I want to pull, but like, if you don't remember something, because obviously, like, and this is a source of trauma for a lot of people, like, something happened to you, but you don't remember because of circumstances, right? Like, that's there's a whole other section of analysis to do there. But I remember this.
Yeah.
And that is a theme. It's a thread throughout this episode. As everyone finds out, Buffy and Giles decide to tell them. And then the whole episode, they're like, oh yeah, I remember when. And then, oh, wait.
Yeah.
And everyone has to grapple with, I have these memories. They seem solid, like they are in the realm of all of my other memories.
Yeah, in which case they are. Like, what makes our history real?
Yeah.
Is remembering it, the experience of it. And like, that does get, once you start unpacking those you start pulling at those philosophical threads, man. It gets weird, when you start really thinking about it. But the fact is that at this point, there is a kid that they love, and that has been part of their experience. And, given the choice, it's not that different from whatever it is that we experience as humans. We are weird, maybe we are weird blobs of mystical energy that are just given this experience in this life, and then that's, and then go back to wherever you came from when the body wears out, or, in which case, like, if you believe that, then Dawn is not a million miles away from that. Dawn is just another human. She's just another human. It's just she happens to have this, her particular energy is a bit different, But it is something that I don't think the show ever really addresses in depth. Like, did Dawn have consciousness as the key before she was placed inside? Is Dawn's consciousness the key, or is Dawn's physicality the key, or is there some energy that is her soul that is the key? What is that? Like, how that translates has always been a weird thing. I've never figured it out.
And how is it that Glory can be in the same room with Dawn and not know? I mean, I know that's the point, right?
Yeah.
That's why the monks made the key into a child. But like, at what point? Because of course the fear in that scene is, oh shit, Glory's going to figure it out.
Right.
But I'm wondering, just like, how would she figure it out if she had touched Dawn? Like, what if she'd done her like brain sucky goodness? Would she have sucked the key into herself?
Yeah.
And then been like, oh, there it is. Like, what?
Yeah. What part of Dawn is the key? And what part of Dawn is just a kid, just Summers, you know? That always throws me off because it feels like Dawn's consciousness is what makes Dawn Dawn, right? You know, that's... So is it her soul? Is it her? But that is part, like, the key, was the key conscious? Can Dawn remember what it was like to be the key? Is there, once we get past the end of this season and the key is no longer an objective for a wild god looking to bring on the apocalypse,
right?
How does being the key affect her? And I just feel like we don't ever really get any answers about that, but it's such an interesting thing to ponder. Like, what is it that really, aside from, you know, the history being fabricated, what is it that really makes Dawn different from the rest of us?
Yeah. And I mean, and this episode, obviously, you know, we'll continue to watch for this as we go along because it's fascinating.
Yes.
But this episode comes down firmly, at least in the dialogue, on the side of she's Buffy's little sister.
Right.
Like, she is a human girl.
Yes.
She's Buffy's little sister. And like, that's all we need to know because that's what is crucial.
Because that's the only thing that matters, right?
Yeah. It's what's
really
crucial
is.
to all of these relationships.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Dawn is just delightful in this episode. I just love her so much.
I love Dawn here. I love everything about her. I have to say, I think Michelle Trachtenberg did an amazing job with this material. This is not an easy thing to play, this existential dread, right?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
For a kid to be able to bring that to, you know, this, it's so wonderfully done. I mean, of course, and I'm sorry, everybody out there, prepare your eyes to roll. I love Dawn and Spike, right? I love this relationship. I know I've got a Spike problem. I get it. I can't help it. But I love I love Dawn's moment where she's like, come on, I'm better than you. You know, she's not scared of him. She's so tough. She goes with him to the magic box. She breaks in. They read this journal. All of it, I love the Dawn and Spike relationship. All through, like every beat to I will set you on fire in your sleep, like everything. I love with Dawn and Spike. It's such a wonderful relationship, and I know that it starts from Spike loves Buffy, and so watching out for Buffy's kid sister is an avenue to Buffy's affections,
right.
or it protects Buffy because he genuinely cares about her. Like, whatever Spike's motivations are, in the end, I do believe he genuinely comes to love Dawn as Dawn for who Dawn is, you know?
I think that's true. I think that's true. And I think it starts here.
It does.
When
absolutely.
She's not cowed by him at all.
Absolutely.
It's so great.
Yes. I mean, it's so fantastic. And I love the way that he understands her. The whole hormone blob thing, right?
Yes.
You know,
yeah.
I mean, I love that he understands who she is. He sees her for exactly who she is and does not give a fuck about her origin story. Like, that is not his concern. Like, Dawn for him does not change at all in his eyes. And he's able to see her clearly for what she is, even when everybody else is kind of struggling, trying to figure it out, you know? Yeah, it's such a great relationship.
And what a fantastic writing decision to have Spike reading Giles's diary
God, I love that.
To Dawn
Yeah.
as the moment when she finds out. They find out together because he's the only member of the core cast who doesn't know.
Right.
at this point.
Nobody keeps me in the bloody loop, do they?
Love it. Yes. Oh my word. And then, yeah. But, and I love him saying, like, all of the snide remarks about the journal. Like, where do you learn to write so small? A fruit fly? And then, I don't know. There is something about the way James Marsters reads.
Oh, I love
this
it.
journal. You know, and it's obviously like not being able to read Giles's tiny writing.
Yes.
You know, accomplish the taste, accomplish the task. Is wonderful.
Love it.
Is wonderful.
It. Yeah.
But there's something so, like, I don't know, almost tender about him reading to her.
Yeah. Like a
and then they
bedtime
realize
story, right?
together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is a bedtime story because he has said to her in the backyard, you know, aren't you supposed to be tucked into bed where nothing scary can eat you?
Right.
Which is, and then she's like, oh, please. Like, I'm not scared of you and your banged up box of chocolates.
I know.
And you know that's the same box of chocolates he was practicing that
apology with. He beat the mannequin
with.
over the head with that box of chocolates and then is bringing that to Buffy, which is adorable and stupid in just a million different ways. I love it. And I love, too, that Dawn sees him. She sees him so clearly. These two, I love this relationship. I absolutely adore it. So yeah, it's delightful. I love when they're in the shop together. I love when Anya pulls out, hey, you know, who used the urn of Orpheus or whatever as an ashtray? Ishtar, the urn of Ishtar as an ashtray. That is honestly one of my favorite moments, is that's how they discovered that Spike was there with Dawn.
It's so good. Mm-hmm. It's so good. I also really appreciate Spike picking the lock.
Yes.
Instead of breaking down the door.
Yes.
And Dawn is like rolling her eyes like, oh, come on. Like, seriously? But I read that as he's being polite.
He is being polite. That's very considerate of him.
This is Spike being considerate,
Exactly.
picking the lock instead of breaking the door down. Yeah. And then it's such a cheap, like, throwaway type gag. But, hey, troll hammer. Thunk. Didn't go with my stuff anyway. Of course. It's just he's just the spikiest in that scene. Yes. He is his goofball self. Mm-hmm. He is clearly, you know, we know he's doing this mostly as a, you know, to have an in with Buffy.
Right.
But he also, like, his humanity is there with her. And he's so, you know, as it dawns on him and he turns, as it dawns on him, so to speak.
I wasn't going to say anything, but yes.
Yeah. You know, and he turns to her, I guess that's you, Niblet. Like, I don't know. There's something really understated and wonderful about Spike in that. And then, of course, we, you know, go to Buffy coming to confront him about this.
I love that. I mean, I love that I guess that's you, Niblet moment, because he's not trying to protect her. And there's something in not trying to protect her that actually respects her. And I love that.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thrust of his whole, that scene with Buffy at his crypt when he's painting his nails.
Oh, I know.
He does his own nails.
They're still wet.
Of course he does.
So cute. It's so cute.
But she comes to him and she is pissed off and like misplaced anger much. Mm-hmm. And he calls her on it and it's wonderful. Mm-hmm. I love it.
Yeah.
She says, how could you let her find out like that?
Right.
And he's like, excuse me.
No, exactly. And he's right. You know, he's like, first of all, nobody keeps me in the bloody loop. So how the hell was I supposed to know? Like, I didn't know this was going on. And second of all, you know, this is her. She has a right to know what she is, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that. Yeah. I love that whole thing. I think it's so great.
The Buffy and Spike stuff in this episode is kind of understated, but really excellent.
Yeah. Like, you know, that moment where she's Buffy taking the time in the middle of a fight to emphatically yell out, "He is not my boyfriend," is a methinks she doth protest too much moment, you know, for me. So we're already seeing this happen, that it's not just Spike. Like, Spike's not in this alone. Buffy's got something. I mean, her feelings for him, I think, are probably like much, much more complex, and definitely mixed with a lot of disgust, you know? But there is a connection between her and Spike. And I think part of it is that she can say anything to him. You know, she can say anything to him, and she moderates herself so much with the men that she loves, you know, to be able to have somebody you can be completely free with and you don't care, or you're not worried about what they think. Like, you know, there's something kind of nice about that, you know. I also love, and this is something that I want to kind of like throw to you, because Spike's empathy I find inherently confusing, and yet it feels right. Like, okay, how can Spike have empathy? He's a vampire. He's a demon. Vampires don't have empathy, right? Or maybe they have it, but they don't engage it. They don't care, right? You know, and because he has this love for Buffy, like suddenly that engages his empathy, you know, like, but his empathy here is not really with Buffy. Like, Buffy comes at him and he's not like, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry I made you mad." He's like, no. And he's defending Dawn. You know, he sees Dawn. She's, you know, she's a magical key, but she's also a 14-year-old hormone bomb. Like, he sees her for what she is this whole time, you know? So, you know, when he responds to Buffy, when they're out looking for Dawn and Buffy is worried and Buffy is vulnerable with him, the second she's vulnerable, he switches into, "You will find her." You know, like, he is supportive. He is strong for her. You know, and there's something about that I just find so wonderful and lovely. But I think this is where Spike gets confusing, right? Because we know he's still a monster. We know he's still a monster. We know what he is. We know that if he didn't have a chip in his head, he would be out there just tearing the world apart, you know? And yet his ability to be these two things at once, and these two things at once, and feel like a harmonized instead of a dissonant character, to me is always confusing. And I haven't really been able to put into words how it works, because it does feel like it should be dissonant, right?
A little bit. Yeah. Although, when you talk about empathy, empathy is about feeling. Empathy is, I feel your pain. Right? Spike is all about feeling things. Yes. Like, that's kind of been his go-to, you know, since he crashed into the Welcome to Sunnydale.
I mean, what does he say? He doesn't think. He feels his way through things. He follows his blood, right?
Yeah. He is very, like, in as much as, like, this is bizarre, he's very, like, heart-centered and emotional, and he lets emotion drive him. So when someone is having the big feelings, he gets that because he is a creature of feelings.
He is.
He's a feeling thing.
He got them deep feels.
Well, and that's a great angle for a demon or a monster or a character who we're going to really allow to be complex and evil, because if you do, you know, if you move through the world based on your feelings and how you feel about something, that can be the gasoline for some really, like, scary behavior.
Well,
right?
Yeah, because being able to understand not just how you feel, not just feel what you feel, but feel what other people feel. Like, that is how he was able to manipulate the whole Yoko factor thing, because he understood where the emotions were and where the soft spots were. So that actually opens up an avenue to evil for him. And yet, like, the ability to feel what other people are feeling, the ability to empathize, that is a a quality associated with goodness.
Yeah, the tricky piece with Spike is that there is the empathy piece for me isn't as problematic as the support piece.
Yeah.
Because it comes, he does do that you will find her bit, but it's after Buffy has admitted to him, like, you were right.
Yeah.
I should have told her.
Yeah.
You know, she's basically
vulnerable with
low-key
him.
apologizing to him.
Well, not just that, but
she-
she's vulnerable with him. And vulnerability, to be vulnerable with somebody implies trust and closeness, you know? For Buffy to have that conversation with Spike. I mean, the thing is, like, you know, in a relationship, you're looking at like the kiss and the sex, and that's significant. This is fucking significant. That's a big deal. I mean, can you imagine going to somebody who is ostensibly your enemy, right? Somebody you hate, and being that vulnerable and that open and, you know, and that hurt with them. Like, that's a
kind of makes you think
deal.
she doesn't actually hate him.
No.
Oh,
no. Her feelings for Spike, I think, are, she has clear, like, and I don't want to call it love or affection, because those are a little bit warm and almost like she skipped those with him, right? They're just close. He just understands her. She's comfortable with him, you know? They understand each other, I think, in a way that most other people don't. And I mean, let's talk too about Buffy. We're talking about Spike and the way that he feels, right? You know, Buffy is a feeler too. She goes on her instinct, right? She doesn't want to study all the stuff like Kendra. Remember Kendra with her study of the Watcher's Guide? And Buffy's like, I just feel my way through it, right? Buffy and Spike are not a million miles apart. I mean, they're almost doppelganger. You know, he's kind of a doppelganger antagonist in a way, although he's not really an antagonist now that he's part of the team. But they have a lot in common, and I think they understand. They're also so isolated. You know, like Buffy is the slayer and she is the one, right? So she is always isolated. And, you know, he's a vampire with a chip in his head, right? He can't be a vampire, can't be a man, you know, can't be the monster, can't be the man. You're stuck in this weird space, you know? And the way that they can identify with each other and understand each other, I think is really interesting. And I think it's part of the reason why I love their relationship. I just think it's so deep. It goes so deep, and it goes beyond, you know, having a crush or like, I love you, or even I want to have sex with you. Like, their relationship here, as they go to having sex, you know, in season 6, like, that's all fun and everything. But it's this stuff. Like, this is the real relationship. This is the part of it that actually has weight and heft, you know? And I think that this is at the heart of what their relationship is. Kissing and having sex is not as significant, I think, as this.
Yeah, I agree with you completely.
Yeah. So it's pretty good. All right. So Ben is Glory, right?
Finally! My God!
Right? And I love that transition. I love the way that reveal happens where he's like, you've got to go, Glory's coming. And then Glory's there. And she has no idea what Ben was talking about. We also now finally understand this connection, the reason why Glory can't hurt Ben. You know, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, the writing is so just precise. I love it.
Yeah.
You know, you don't remember, you were talking to him, not me. Like, great. 2 lines. We got everything we need to know. So not only is Ben Glory and Glory is Ben, but they don't communicate, like, they don't share knowledge. So Ben knows that Dawn is the key, but Glory doesn't.
Yeah.
Which is
just pretty cool.
Really interesting.
It's pretty cool, and it's so fucking dangerous. right?
Oh my God.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it also is, I mean, it's so interesting because physically they're not the same person, but they are physically the same person, but clearly their brains are different and memories are stored differently. And where does Ben go when Glory takes over? Like,
I want to know this.
And Ben has no control over it. Does Glory?
Yeah.
Does Glory have control over it? Does she just pop in whenever she wants? Because if she could, then why wouldn't she just all the time? And, you know, and I mean, that's why there's this glamour, so that if anybody witnesses it happening, they can't remember it happening, you know? So, I mean, that makes sense. But damn. It is such, and you know, we have that moment like in the beginning when Giles is talking about Glory and these other two gods that she was kind of palling around with, and that somebody found a way into the universe, and they were like, well, what's the way? And with Glory, apparently it was diving into the body of a young baby, you know? I mean, I'm guessing, you know, it is. And that bodily stuff, too. Like, I figured this must be just your cat.
Yes, the idea of Ben and Glory sharing a body, but not really, is completely fascinating to me. Because, what?
Well,
what? Especially,
right. What if she pops in when he's in the middle of having sex?
Yeah.
You know?
like, what? Well, and what would that do to you as Ben, you know, presumably like at any moment,
and
like,
you just don't remember, you know, like,
and then you just wake up somewhere unexpected, like,
and then where is Ben when Glory's not there, and where is Glory? Like, where is their consciousness? Are they just gone?
Yeah. Who? What? Who?
I mean, right? I don't know. Like, I think it's, first of all, I think it's so interesting. I love that reveal. I think it's a really great mechanic. You know, it's such an interesting and like crunchy question, especially in a show that does spend so much time talking about identity, right?
Yeah.
And where is your identity? Is it in your physical body? Then the physical body, even when it's Glory, is still Ben, right? But I don't think that's it. It's the consciousness.
No.
Like, and the consciousness is so ethereal. Like, how do you pin that shit down, you know? And then where is that consciousness during the time when Glory's running the show? The whole thing, I think, is just fascinating. And I also love the fact that Ben's got to be waking up in a dress 9 times out of 10, right?
Right? Right? I love Glory with her cotton moment.
No, she puts the silk on, yeah.
And the silk dress in Ben's locker. Like, do they make they make concessions for each other somehow?
I guess they must.
Maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I love it. I love how holy shit it is for this show. Like, we've never done this before, and it's so great and so wonderful, and that I love the whole scene of Glory and Dawn talking in the room before there's fighting, and before we really get into it with this whole, we're gonna glitter clap Glory into the middle of the air. Like, it's so good. So good. I love the whole end of this episode. But starting with that scene between Dawn and Glory, where Glory's got a little bit of like respect is too strong a word, but appreciation for Dawn and the questions that she's asking, and then turns so quickly on her when she realizes you don't know anything.
Yeah.
It's menacing and creepy and so, I don't know, it's so delightful. And there's, of course, so much suspense because we know and Dawn knows that she's the key.
Yeah.
And is Glory going to figure it out? But apparently the monks knew what they were doing because Glory doesn't figure it out. But she does. There is something about Glory and the way she manipulates people, but in a way that is specific to them.
Yeah.
She doesn't have a go-to way of menacing. She is menacing contextually.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm thinking about her kind of sort of evilly seducing the knight.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah.
Like it's played like a seduction, or at least she plays it like a seduction
Mm-hmm.
for herself.
Right.
And that's part of what makes her evil, right? Is she enjoys
Right.
this process of
Playing with
manipulating
her
and
victim.
torturing.
Yeah. You know, she's like my cat and the chipmunks. She likes to play with them until they pee on my carpet and die under the couch.
You'll just need one death because I'm going to make it nice and slow
Exactly.
and painful for you. But goddamn, Glory menacing Dawn is probably
It's good.
the greatest, and Dawn pretty much holding her own.
Oh, no, what I love is that Dawn in that moment has a fucking objective. She is interrogating Glory. And this is why this is the best Dawn. Like, Dawn, I know we have times where Dawn gets irritating and whatever. Let me just say, she is no Connor, right? That's all I'm going to say about that. But, she's amazing. Like, she is so freaking badass and I adore her. And I think that where she's so desperate to find out about herself that she starts asking these questions, like, if I know more about it, maybe I can help you find it. And Michelle Trachtenberg gets across the horror and the terror that she's feeling in that moment, and yet overcoming that in order to interrogate a fucking god, right? Like,
Right?
I find that so badass and so endearing. And this is one of the moments where I truly, truly adore Dawn. She's fantastic.
She's so powerful, like,
She's
throughout
tough.
this episode.
She's tough, man. This kid.
Yeah. I like her. She's sassy.
She's sassy. I love it. It's wonderful.
I also, from a visual storytelling point, I just really enjoy the fact that Glory and Dawn have this conversation/interrogation surrounded by X-rays.
Yeah.
Like, not just the physical body stuff, but like the insides, like your body insides, because there is this little bit of tension about, especially among the Scoobies. I mean, certainly with Dawn herself, but also among the Scoobies about, you know, like, is she real? What is she? You know, Anya says, you make a very pretty little girl, which I just love. God. But there is that little bit of tension about, like, Dawn's human physicality. And, okay, there's a moment that I just hate, and I wonder if you noticed this, but when Xander tickles her, is he feeling that she's human? Is that what he's doing?
Oh.
Is he overcompensating for being nervous about the fact that she might not be real?
Oh, God.
I don't like it. I
hadn't really, I mean, I didn't care for it because, well, first of all, I hate tickling. I find tickling to be obnoxious as hell.
Don't do it.
No, unless somebody asks you to, no. And there's also a something like an inherently kind of predatory feel in tickling, especially when an older man tickles like a younger woman, you know, younger girl. Even though, like, I will say, like, I do believe there are, like, you know, my kid's dad would tickle them when they were kids and it was all very innocent and nobody intended anything bad about it. Like, you know, it's fine, but there is something about that which, you know, in this particular relationship, it's a little weird. It's a little creepy. It's like, don't touch her. You know, don't touch this kid's body, especially because, you know, a girl who's at that age, you know, who's transitioning into, you know, like womanhood or whatever. That's such a terrible fucking phrase, but you know what I mean. Like, there's a certain, like, you don't touch. Like, there's a certain point where you stop, you know, touching kids without, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's just like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, you always hug your kids. Like, I always hugged my kids and I always like made sure, like, there's that, but there's just something like there's a certain point where the ways in which you touch your kids just different because they're growing up and because they're not small children anymore, you know? So yeah, I don't know. It's weird. And I don't like tickling anyway.
Yeah, I don't like tickling. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. I do like the idea of sort of, I don't know, working with the physicality of this reveal that Dawn is the key.
Yeah.
But, but I think that the X-ray, I think all of the X-ray imagery behind Glory and Dawn do that in a really artful way, whereas Xander tickling her, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
But that felt that combined with Xander's like, to Giles, she has a crush on me, because she's like a powerful lady.
I hate
and
that.
I
hate
why?
that with my
This is season like 1 and 2. Xander, what are you doing?
Right.
What?
Like, and the thing is that we've had good Xander for a while. And just when you get comfortable with good Xander, you get this, let me look at this young girl's traumatic experience and make it about my ego. I mean, yeah, it ain't great. It's not great Xander in this episode.
His hair is looking especially floppy in this episode too. I just saying.
No, he does.
Just
he has
saying.
floppy haired douchebag. Ode to floppy haired douchebag on him. Yeah, it's not great, definitely. But you know what I love though so much is Tara and Willow when they're talking about the birthday cake candles that don't go out when you blow them out, and then Willow says those used to scare me, and then Tara says me too, and I was like, oh my god, get you a person who gets it the way that Tara does. Oh my god.
I enjoy the two of them so much. I love that they get to do another spell together.
I know. And a badass spell. Oh my god.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just looks great. I know that from like a physical effect point of view, it's literally just they throw some sparkly shit in the air.
I love that Glory is covered in glitter. She is never going to get that out of her hair. It's just going to be there for the rest of the time.
Nope. It's never going anywhere.
Glitter never goes anywhere.
But I love that. I love how badass they are, though. Like, just doing a spell in the middle of this fight with this
right?
terrifying being. And, like...
It's so great.
It's great.
It is so great.
Really, really good.
Yeah. I know.
And we're continuing to see, like, Willow being affected really powerfully by the magic that they're doing. Which, little bit of foreshadowing, a bit of foreshadowing that this is becoming a big deal.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. It was always a big deal. And now it's like a big enough deal that she's collapsing and Giles is like, whoa, that was impressive.
Yeah.
And like Giles would know. Giles would know about the collapsing properties of dark magic, whatever.
Yes,
and I love, of course, that they send Glory to the middle of the sky.
Oh, I know. And then you just see her drop. It's so great.
Yeah.
It's so great.
Her little sparkly form, just, long shot, just falling straight down.
I love all of it. Although the moment when Tara says she's a brain sucker and she gets all weirded out, and then I'm like, oh my God, sad face emoji. Yeah.
Speaking of foreshadowing,
I know. And just that subtle little moment, which I absolutely love. It's so great. But Jesus, I love Willow and Tara so much. So much.
And they're really like... I know we're not at what are you wearing, but like they just look great.
Oh, we can skip right ahead to what are you wearing because that's next on the list. Let's go ahead and talk about it.
They just look so good. Like Willow's hair especially is like really good.
Yeah.
She's growing out that like super short first year of college haircut and like the hair department is taking it seriously and it looks fantastic.
That's pretty nice.
I like that as they get more like as Willow and Tara get more grown up and in love, they start to look more grown up and pretty. Like that, I don't know. Maybe I'm projecting because I just love Willow and Tara so much, but there's this, they always just look so pretty together.
They are so pretty together. They really are.
And it's delightful.
Yes,
It's delightful.
I always
But we
love their
actually
clothes. I love their styles. I think they're just so wonderful together. Yeah.
But we actually do have, like, if we're talking about like the narrative and metaphorical significance of clothing, which is what we try to do here, and what are you wearing, and not just like Noelle
and not just go nuts over pretty
fawning all over the pretty girls, which
hey, ain't nothing wrong with that.
That's fine. It's a thing. It's a look. I mean, I talked about it a little bit already, but Glory going, oh, cotton.
I know.
When she wakes up in scrubs. Like you can just, I love this idea of like, oh, the peasantry, like what the humans wear.
Right.
But I love Glory and clothes almost as much as I love Spike and food. And not just, because it's delightful, but also narratively. Yeah. What does it say? What does it mean to have a god care about fashion?
Yeah.
That's a really interesting choice.
No, it is. It is. But she is like, her opening monologue that she did in the very early days was all about being stuck in this meat sack. And so there is a very strong sense of physicality with Glory, that even though this isn't her natural physical form, she is very much of the form. She feels everything. And when she fights, it's not like she uses magical powers. She's just super strong and beats the hell out of Buffy, So it's interesting. Her intense physicality. And I always find that really, what's so funny, what I love about working with you is that you do have this very strong sense of the physicality in these characters, which is something that I never really think about. I'm always about their emotions, what they're thinking, what they're saying, but not like what their physical experience is. And so it's such an interesting, additional element to watching Buffy that I really appreciate that you kind of opened my eyes to, is that physicality, and how does that physicality, especially given that her physicality is being shared, how does that express itself within Glory? And of course, the choice of the fabric, right? The little joys, right?
Yeah. Well, and the fabric quality, noticing, because she's noticing being in a meat suit, she's also noticing things like fabric quality. Makes your skin sing. She's, and there is that, there's that powerful, slinky sexiness about her as well, which is very much about, the fact that she is played by a conventionally attractive, for the culture, young blonde woman. And playing that kind of physical, there is something, okay, how do I want to express this in as non-problematic way as possible? I mean, I'm going to step in it. Here we go. I'm going to step in it. There is something in our culture and in our media about women's bodies and women being embodied, what it means for a woman to feel into her body and acknowledge her body, which is something that Glory has to do because this is not her preferred state of being, but she finds enjoyment in it as much as she finds discomfort in it. And what's fascinating to me about that is because we are so weird culturally about women and bodies and women's bodies, that kind of embodied, I call it sexiness because she looks very seductive when she's owning it. And maybe that's my cultural programming showing. But that sexiness gets played as sinister.
Yes.
Which is not unique to Glory.
No.
We've seen this character, right? We've seen the embodied sexy woman, and we're supposed to use that we're supposed to use that like physicality as an indicator that, oh, she's bad news.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's a tricky thing.
Well,
it's a very, very tricky thing.
It's a patriarchal, kind of catch-22, right? Is that they want women to be beautiful so that they can like consume the women. But if the women use the power that comes with that beauty, then they are evil, right? Mm-hmm. And so that is that's pretty much no matter what, if you're a woman in this society, you're in a dark place. It's a dark ride all the way through, no matter where you end up,
The only way to win is not to play.
Yeah.
I mean, really, the only way, like, that's it. And as much as I love Glory stopping the fight for a split second to say, hey, those are really nice shoes, as Buffy goes to kick her. Like, isn't it interesting that having this super powerful god villain character also, like, she is also interested in fashion enough to notice Buffy's shoes. And someone has probably written some sort of a master's thesis on this, so I can probably just stop with like the implication of this push-pull of Glory is all powerful and also like very material.
And all of her victims up until this point have been men.
I noticed that, and I didn't know entirely what to do with that other than it's
Is that a commentary on the patriarchy with Glory? Is that,
Well, I mean, her evil, like the way her evil is played off, even with respect to her minions and such, is this very seductress kind of thing. And of course, cis heteropatriarchy.
Right.
It would be uncomfortable if the evil sexy girl was being evil and sexy with girls. I don't know. Yeah. I think, okay, Dawn has this moment where she says to Buffy, you're just mad because you have to fight somebody who's prettier than you. Which I don't think is entirely true, but I also don't think is entirely false. Being a girly girl with supernatural badass powers and strength is kind of Buffy's thing.
Right.
Like, that's kind of her whole thing. And here's this girl who's kind of like her in a lot of ways.
And very quippy like her. I mean, Glory can be, you could look at Glory as Buffy's shadow self, although, Faith really was that, but there is something in Glory that does have a bit of the doppelganger antagonist inside of it. It's a reflective, not doppelganger maybe, but a reflective antagonist. There's a real foil thing going on there, which I think is part of what makes Glory so fun.
Yeah. Oh, she's wonderful. And the way she speaks, I know I've mentioned this before, but Glory and her relationship to language is also fascinating.
I love that tiny snapdragon.
Tiny snapdragon. I love when she says to Dawn, let's go somewhere off the beaten. She doesn't say off the beaten path. Yeah. She says off the beaten, which first of all, she's just like twisted this guy's head almost clean off. Yeah. So there's a sinister note there, but it reminds me a little bit of Faith.
Yeah.
In that slang is sort of, kind of, but also not really informed by the language.
Well, that her power almost seems to seep into, like, she can do whatever she wants with the language, because she's that powerful, like, and her presence is that powerful, that she can actually she makes the language sing for her. It's just, I just love her.
Well, all right. Here's another connection. Yeah. Here's another connection to Faith.
Yeah.
So Faith gets played off as being kind of unstable, right? Mm-hmm. She's this live wire who could do anything at any moment. And she's got that kind of slip, slidey, slang, quippy dialogue. Well, Glory's whole weakness is that mentally she's a little slip, slidey and, not all there all the time. And also has that quippy, fluid language. And I wonder about the speech patterns and the dialogue choices for these characters, these two characters specifically, combined with their overt sexuality and how that plays into the idea of them being evil or bad, or what makes a bad girl? Like how do we know that she's a bad girl? Well, one of the ways is she dresses like a skank, right? But one of the ways might be from a media standpoint, she plays around with the language because language is part of how we express what our thoughts are and what our ideas are. So if your language is a little weird, your thoughts are a little weird. If your language is unconventional, your thoughts are going to be unconventional, which is that's how we show the quote unquote crazy people. They say shit that doesn't go together or doesn't seem to go together. So I don't know, like it's the gradation of deviance, how far your language deviates from what is expected, maybe as an indication of how far you yourself, like, morally deviate from, I don't know, like just as a visual storytelling or visual and auditory storytelling component to all of this. And I don't know, I'm also sitting here trying to explain to myself why I find Glory so compelling and so fascinating.
I don't know. I think that's an all-day conversation. That's an all-day, very complicated conversation, which, of course, we will continue to have over the coming weeks. But can we transition into the girl power moment of the week?
Oh, not with a girl power bit.
Oh, absolutely we can. Absolutely we can. Buffy takes a fucking crowbar in the chest. Excuse me? What the actual hell?
What the actual hell?
That's really brutal. It's really fucking brutal.
That's gotta hurt.
I mean, damn. I talked already about Willow and Tara doing spells and just, doing spells together all the time as like a thing that they do, but then really like holding that calm, steady energy. Amidst a fight.
In the middle of flying crowbars.
Flying
badass.
Crowbars and...
Exactly.
And,
flying vampires.
Damn. And I think there's also a real girl power moment in Dawn sneaking out to find her own answers.
Oh, yeah. I think Dawn interrogating Glory, honestly.
Oh, definitely.
Is like one of my big girl power moments in this episode. I think there's a lot. There's a really good girl power going on.
It's a really powerful episode in a lot of ways.
All right. So, Noelle, what's your favorite part?
I think it's like, as hard as it is to watch, I think it's Dawn with the kitchen knife. Not because I love it. Not because I love watching it. But it's so huge and it's so brutal, and the emotional resonance of that moment and how that becomes the turning point for Buffy and her new relationship to what her sister is. Just everything. It's a lot. It's a lot. And I I appreciate it.
It's a very intense moment, and I can absolutely see that being something that would speak to you. For me, I have to say it is Spike reading Giles's journal so awkwardly. Like, James Marsters does such a lovely job of that, of bringing that awkward reading into that moment, and the sense of the bedtime story, the sense of the dark fairy tale, with Dawn listening and being a kid, and then not being a kid anymore. Like, this is a very transformative moment for Dawn. She's never going to be a kid again.
Yeah.
Like, this is a big transitional moment for her. And Spike being there to experience that with her. And then to say, guess that's you, Niblet.
Yeah.
To give her a kind of an affectionate nickname in that moment. I just love all of it.
It's great. The emotions of this episode are just unbelievably good.
All right, if you enjoyed this conversation, would like to join in, come find us on social media. I am at Lani Diane Rich on Twitter, and Noelle is at Noelle Aloud on Instagram, and the hashtag is Still Pretty.
This episode of Still Pretty was brought to you by the Chipperish media producers who support us on Patreon at the power producer level. These people are the reason why Still Pretty is coming to you free and ad-free right now, so thank you to our June producers. And this week's special message for our power producers: I wasn't lurking. I was standing about. It's a whole different vibe.
To find out how you too can support Chipperish Media, visit patreon.com/chipperish. Other ways to show your support: write a great review on Apple Podcasts, tell your friends about the show, or be badder than Spike.
We will be back next time with Crush, the 14th episode of Season 5. Until then, conversation's over, hell bitch.